This is about the theme of honoring the dark. Wow, that's deep stuff. Because, you know, as you've heard, I'm the sustainable community guy, so how does honor the dark fit into that? And I think, as some of my more negative friends would say, life sucks. Then it gets better, then it sucks again. Now, I prefer to take a slightly more positive approach, and I do recognize that there are times when we are all ground down. You know what I'm talking about, right? That time when you're just like, oh, please, I can't take anymore. But for many of us, we find a way to use that to grow. It's that whole whatever doesn't kill us makes us stronger thing. So that grit, that resilience, that persistence, that's a big part of honoring the dark, recognizing the value in being put in that pressure cooker and finding your way out. The challenge is some people aren't finding their way out, and some people are unclear about how to get out of the dark. So we want to think, how can we do that better ourselves, and how can we support other people in doing that? So that's a little about where I'm focusing. To me, I view that darkness as part of the cycle of growth and renewal. You can't have a gorgeous forest without trees dying. Those trees become nurse trees for a future forest. So when I think of honor the dark, that's where I go. Natural cycles of nature, natural cycles of society, and natural cycles of the economy. Those three things, people, planet, profit, those are the three pillars in my mind to true sustainability. So that's where I focus my energy. Now, in order to demonstrate that I'm not just talking a big talk, I want to go back to some of the darkness that I went through earlier on that is tied to communities. So if you'll permit me, I'll tell you a little bit about the drama that's gone on in my life. First year business student, I had a genius idea. There were some condos for sale, 4-bedroom condos for sale, just at the base of SFU Hill. What if I get 2 of my classmates to cover half and I'll cover the other half? Then we'll have a 4-bedroom condo that we own as students. The value will go up. And you know, if someone needs a 4-bedroom condo, they really need a 4-bedroom condo. Like, come on. You got a big family, you got to live in a condo? I'm brilliant. No, I am not brilliant. I bought into Canada's first and worst leaky condo complex. Yay! 216 owners spread out over 13.5 acres. Sounds idyllic. Trees, grass, ivy, beautiful. It was a short walk from Lougheed Mall, which now has a SkyTrain station. And that was a short bus ride up to the hill. I can't imagine anything going wrong. Except for there were entire walls, 3 stories high, held up by stucco on the outside and drywall on the inside. Where'd the 2x4s go? So if the 2x4s in your wall are rotten due to water, you've got a real problem. Now you could run around and try and fix it, but if you've got 13 acres of rotten buildings, that's not much of a solution. These were built in the 70s as social housing and then repainted, and they put some tar fix on the roof and sold them as strata condos. Yay! They were gone. Now I'm a first-year student. I'm a varsity athlete. I'm an entrepreneur. Somebody's going to fix this, but it's not going to be me because I'm too busy. And plus, I'm not even like 20. Like I'm super young. No one's going to let me. No. So I waited, and 5 years went by. Nothing got done. Blaming. We patched this. We patched that. The legal bills started coming in because you have to sue the people that are responsible for this, right? Right, you got to do that, right? Yeah. Well, guess how much good that did us? Not much. So finally I thought, well, nothing's happening. Maybe I should try. And I'm like, okay, I'll run for council. They actually elected me. I'm like in my 20s. I was like, okay. And then I got on the council and I, hung back and listened for a while, and then I realized, oh my goodness, we're really in trouble. So I'm like, oh, I'll run for president. They elected me. Fools. But I'm like, okay, I don't have all the ideas, so I'll just go through all the ideas that have been thrown at me. Many of them were actually pretty good. And I tested them, and I tried them, and I just kept pushing forward until we ended up with the craziest idea of all. Let's start again. Start the construction cycle again. Bulldoze all the buildings and build new buildings, which has never been done since and had never been done to date on a strata building. So we set all sorts of precedents for the country of Canada, at great expense, of course. But at the end of the day, we went from a situation where the first offer we got for the land was $5 million, which would have gotten everyone about $25,000 on a place they'd spent over $100,000 to buy, till the final offer was $26 million. And everyone walked away with roughly what they'd put in 10 years earlier. Now, this wasn't a complete success. Some people thought it was a raging success. But in 10 years, property values generally go up, not stay flat. In 10 years, you don't have massive repair bills and legal bills. We did. In 10 years, 15% of the owners don't normally walk away from their mortgages. CMHC owned 15% of the units in that building. It was so bad at times that in one building, the top 2 stories were vacant. So nobody knew that there was a leak on the top floor until the entire roof and all the water it trapped collapsed down, then washed out the entire second floor suite, which was also vacant. Guess what happened to the people on the first floor? We got some very panicked calls. And when we went into those suites, which had been vacant and not looked after, we realized we had to gut them just to keep the rest of the building safe. So we were living in buildings that frankly just weren't even safe for human habitation. And we were in there for 10 years. But I realized that nobody would have paid a 20-something to do the job I did. I got to learn things that people with 3 times my experience would never even dream of. I worked with all sorts of consultants and techs and politicians and planning departments, and I can't believe the blessing it was in terms of what I learned. It was hell. It was dark. It was brutal. I remember having this one guy's 300 pounds of angry plumber, and he was literally screaming obscenities, and you know that thing where the spittle comes flying off their mouth? It was landing in wet clumps on the people in front of him. And here's me. I ain't 300 pounds. And I'm like, I learned the skills to manage that level of anger from people that threatening that has allowed me to work with all manner of people throughout my life. It was an incredible blessing. But I had to make a choice. I had to decide, I'm going to do something. I'm going to move forward. Yes, it's really dark. And sometimes it was all I could do to just push forward, put the blinders on and push forward. Strategically, I'd test out an option, and when I decided it wasn't working, then I'd switch. But people would tell me all the time, oh, you can't do this. It's never going to happen. You can't do this because you're too young. You can't do this because you have no experience. You can't do this because it's not possible. You can't do this because it's never been done before. Guess what? We did it. Now, on that journey, a lot of people loved me or hated me. There were 216 units owned by people who didn't have a whole lot of money. I bought this as a first-year student with some classmates. Some of the people in there had no education. And I mean, didn't finish high school, like next to no education whatsoever. Some of these people had PhDs. Some of these people had no morals and were trying to manipulate the strata into buying them out and giving them a big payday by holding up the process. Some of these people were the kindest, wisest souls you have ever met in your life, who'd sunk every dime they had into their retirement home. Can you imagine living some of their lives? Well, I did, and I got to know these people really well. And it gave me that insight into what allows a community to function well. because at the point where things got really, really bad for us as owners was also the point that we were able to create a somewhat stable society. The complaints actually went way down when things got really bad because me and a couple other people worked really hard to pull the people together. We are huddled in the dark, being bombarded by every kind of bad news possible, and we pulled together. In fact, the interesting thing I noticed is that complaints only started again after we'd gotten the agreed purchase price to buy us all out. It's like, oh, well, my porch needs fixing. It's like, no, it doesn't. But managing and working with different types of people in human nature is a very powerful skill set. And that's one of the things that I've tried to pass on to my son, because none of us get through life unscathed. How do I give my son the knowledge and experience I have without putting him through the hell that I went through? Because no parent wants to do that. How do you help your friends grow in ways without going through that darkness? And I think it comes down to helping people understand when you're stuck, when you're in the dark, you need to realize you're in part of a cycle and you need to flip the switch. Choosing. I love that word. Choosing to take action. Do you have to be really smart to choose? No. Do you have to be really experienced to choose? No. Do you have to have a good reason to choose? No. I choose to choose because I choose it. And if you want to be happy, can you just choose to be happy because you want to be happy? Yeah, why not? Same principle. So, I've shared this concept with some people, and there's a quote that I love, and it's from one of the wisest people I know. And it goes like this. Listen carefully. When you flip the switch of making a decision, a light comes on that shows you keys to new doors. Wow. That's deep. Who knows whose quote that is? Would the person who owns this quote please stand up?
Me.
He came up with this when he was 8. If an 8-year-old gets this, I sure better be able to. So what do you think, dude?
My thoughts on his community is that it's going to change my life as my generation. It's going to make my living experiences better, well, livable, because at the rate that society's going at today, we're going to drive our planet into the ground. So things like this is what's going to hold us up for the next 100,000 or 1,000 years.
Hopefully. Thank you. Thank you very much. He is the co-founder of Futures Forward. I think one of the challenges I have is that we are bombarded by media and ideas that really mess with our heads to the point where, well, let's be honest. I mean, humans as a species have dominated the planet to such a degree that we are numb to our effects on it. I've got a couple pictures that would just mess with your head. One of them is a perfect example of how humans have dominated the planet and at the same time are the oblivious to all the damage we're doing. It's a beautiful nature scene, except for the fact that the entire hillside is ablaze. Smoke, flames pouring off. And in the foreground, 4 gentlemen playing golf. What? Like literally in front of a forest fire. It's just a fire. Not a big deal. It's not like it'll damage my lungs or damage the planet or... And how did that hillside get so dry? Perhaps from watering the golf course? Do you have any idea how much water it takes to water a golf course? I do. It's frightening. It's about Black Friday. It's almost Black Friday. This is exciting until you look at the scenes of riots and mobs over 25-inch TVs. And then you see the news with pictures of starving children. There's a huge disconnect there. Don't get me wrong, I like stuff too. But there's got to be some point where we try and find a balance. And that goes back to the cycles of sustainability. Nature's been around forever, and it's figured out solutions to so many problems that exist. It would be really nice if we listened to that. There's actually a science called biomimicry. It's this concept that, hey, nature figured it out a long time ago. Why don't we just borrow their solutions and use them in our buildings, in our homes, in our lives? And they actually have a youth design challenge where they let these young, gorgeous minds borrow ideas from nature and come up with solutions. One class came up with an idea for roofing tiles to be used in the desert, and they came up with a design borrowed from the back of a beetle, which can get sandblasted and still survive in the desert. What? Brilliant. That's what we're looking at. I'm actually pretty convinced that by the time our children are 30, they'll look at us like, you guys are such idiots. Why weren't you doing this all along? Some of you are laughing. It's like, yeah, we know this is the case. We messed up. Now, my dad, love the guy, but he's one of those climate deniers. He forwards me emails, Trump says this, or here's a report that fossil fuels are not damaging the planet. Scientists don't agree that there's a climate emergency. And of course, I'm foolish enough to respond and send him facts and information. And finally, I just said, Dad, stop sending me this stuff. Do your own research. If you're convinced this is true, go and tell your grandson to his face that you don't care how messed up you leave the planet for him. Otherwise, join me and try and make some difference, because last time I checked, you've got some free time. And then I recently sent him a slideshow that was full of facts, like jam-packed, and I said, I know you and some of your friends are a little immune to facts, but here's something to chew on just in case you're bored. And he said, thanks, I'll pass it on. I'm like, oh, maybe he's actually coming around. I don't know. Let's get back to the whole cycles of things. We talked about the 3 pillars of sustainability. We know that if you have all 3 of those, you're good. But again, if we're going to honor the dark, we have to realize that at some point or another, one of those legs of the stool, those 3 legs of the stool, is gonna get weak and wobbly. If we have a strong society and strong economics, we are very much able to address the environmental. If we have strong environmental and strong economics, we should be able to support the society. So we always have to be working on all 3, knowing that at some point they're all going to falter, at least in some way. Fine, no secret there. The problems we have in our system, and we can blame the government or big oil or greedy CEOs or whatever, that's fine. But blaming doesn't change anything. There is a quote that I love by a man by the name of Viktor Frankl. When we are no longer to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Can we change big oil corporations? Minimally, not overall. Can we change big pharma? Can we change our annoying neighbor who keeps cutting our tree and killing it? Well, maybe not. But we can take responsibility for ourselves and what we do. And the truth is, if we become very skilled at working within society, improve our social skills to the point where we can get along with pretty much anyone, and we can listen well, we can express our needs well, we can manage conflict well. If we passionately pursue the concept of sustainability, and we are well connected to our neighbors, they're not really likely to obstruct us that much. They're likely to join us. Now, does that mean you have to be out in the front lines with the pickets and the cheering and the chanting and, following the Greta Thunberg fan club? No. It's the whole act local, think global kind of thing. Sometimes it's good to just think big, spread joy, and work your tail off to create something important. Having a purpose in life is one of the things that gets me out of bed in the morning. Most of us in a country as amazing as Canada have enough money to pay the bills. Some of us struggle more than others, But generally speaking, we are incredibly blessed. We don't live in dirt floor lean-tos. We don't cook over an open fire. We don't freeze at night. We don't worry that if we catch pneumonia, we're going to die. We have incredible wealth and resources and access to them with relative ease. So with all that, what are we doing with it? If we go back to honor the dark, those of us who've made it through those challenges, pushed through the cycle of dark to create something better, to find a solution, we grow, we're stronger. People who go through life all happy all the time and never have any challenges, how much do they grow? In a small way, do you not feel a small amount of pity for them? It's not fair that they had life so easy. I feel bad for them. I wish you had more challenges in your life, especially if you've learned how to be strategically persistent. You know when to flip the switch. You know when to change direction. But you keep pushing no matter what. It's not because you're crazy, because you're not doing the same thing over and over again. You are adapting. You are revising. You are growing. There's a big difference between that and just doing the same thing over and over again. Having the end goal in sight is extremely helpful. You've heard this before. I mean, even athletes know this. Like, I heard Tiger Woods once quoted this. I don't know if he said it's his own idea, but if you want to get a great golf game, think of where the golf ball needs to be in the end and work backwards. And when his golf ball doesn't land where he wanted it to go, he revises his plan and thinks backwards. Now I'm going to talk about how we use these cycles of honoring the dark to move forward. So I'm going to talk a bit about how I've looked at those 3 pillars of sustainability and how I've looked to natural cycles to create this community concept I have. So I'm going to start with economic sustainability, because a lot of people don't really think of that inside a close community. Especially, some people think of the sustainable community as like, oh, it's the hippie thing. Well, economic sustainability is not really high on the hippie radar last time I checked. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a very valid part of being sustainable. There's some people who are like, oh, money. Well, economics is not just about money. And I'll give you some examples of that. All right. So, similar construction costs. Did you know that the cost to build sustainable, green housing is extremely similar to the cost of building a regular house? Some of you are like, no, I didn't know that. I thought it was way more expensive. It can be, and it used to be. And do you know what one of the main sources of increased costs for sustainable construction is? How about the bureaucracy? Oh, don't go there. So there's a group within every city or every municipality that is in charge of planning and development. And there are some amazing people in those departments. I got to tell you, they care deeply. There are also some that don't care so deeply and are more interested in keeping their job than supporting the community they are tasked to serve. When you see a project you like, whether it's a community center or a building or a not-for-profit, step up. Make sure that people in charge know. Because right now, a lot of lip service is being paid, but the results are not there. But otherwise, a standard, sustainable building costs no more money. Don't believe the lies. If you build a green building that respects the cycles of nature, that recognizes the natural cycles of the economy and of society, you will have significantly lower operating costs. Most of you know this already. You probably don't recognize the scope of it. This is a big number, and it's only getting bigger. Right now we get excited about, I'm going to put solar cells on my house and they'll be paid off in 15 years. And that number's coming down. Now the scientists are coming up with these crazy new inventions called perovskites. And basically it's a cheap paint you can paint on things that generate solar power. They can put it in your cell phone, on the screen, and on the back. They can put it in your windows. Can you imagine? You're looking out your window and the sun's coming through and it's charging your house. That's pretty cool. Now, it's not ready for market yet, but the advances in the last few years alone are stunning. Scientists are cooking up stuff every day. They've got windows made out of wood fiber, transparent windows made out of wood. Huh? A couple more years, that should be ready for market. Interestingly enough, a lot of this stuff is coming out of Northern Europe, where they've been focused on sustainability for a little bit longer than we have. And if you look at stats for a country like Belgium in their sustainable construction, the overall costs have plummeted for sustainable construction. And now they're not even allowed to build normal buildings anymore, because one, it costs more, and two, it wastes more. Long-term costs kill it. If you build a sustainable community, that would include a number of features that would allow you to create income for the community, such as if you have an orchard, you can sell some of the fruit, the stuff you don't eat. Same with greenhouses. And right now, sustainable communities, it's a new thing. People just they're not ready for it. And there will be late adopters. So there will need to be people training and helping new builders, new policymakers. That's an educational opportunity, and there is an opportunity to make good money doing that. That is one of the ways that a place called Our Eco Village puts itself on the map and pays their bills. If you haven't heard of them, they're very close by at Shawnigan Lake, and they've done some pretty cool stuff. That is a huge source of revenue for them, an important one. That's great. Making money, making things better. Gotta respect that. Time banking is a way of exchanging your time to get access to other resources. A simple way is, let's say I hate gardening, but someone else loves gardening. They'll do an hour of gardening for me, and I will do an hour of cleaning out their gutters. My hour is worth the same as their hour. Someone else might love teaching yoga, and they can teach a yoga class to everyone and put in an hour towards the community. So all of a sudden, everyone who has all this extra time to share and resources and abilities to share can do so. They don't get paid. They exchange hours and resources. Now, this is the same if a lawyer offers free legal advice to his neighbors. He gets 1 hour of his time. He doesn't get $350. He gives 1 hour, and you get 1 hour. And in return, someone might clean out his gutters because he's like, I ain't touching the gutters. Fine, an hour's worth an hour. So now it opens up new and interesting opportunities. And this has been expanded in some very interesting ways. One that I like and have mentioned before, in Brazil, they had a lot of garbage in the slums. And they had a lot of empty bus seats. So you know what they did? They went to everyone and they said, if you bring in 3 bags of sorted garbage, we will give you a bus token. Because they had no money to clean up the garbage from the slums. But all of a sudden, all the garbage was gone. And guess how long it took? 2 weeks. Can you imagine cleaning out an entire slum of one of the biggest cities in the world in 2 weeks? And the buses were kind of full. And then the grocery stores started accepting bus tokens in trade for food. Now these people who had nothing, no money for food, lived in filth and squalor, could afford to buy things, could travel. Travel's expensive if you've got no money. Paying for the bus is like, you make $1 a day and the bus is how much? You can't travel to work. You can't do much of anything. So all of a sudden, life changed dramatically by a simple way of implementing complementary currencies. Now put that into a small society where you can exchange hours, maybe earn your down payment by doing work. Wow. That changes the map in terms of affordability. What if your strata fees could be earned in part by doing work that serves the community? Maybe you are the community water operator and you test all the water and you check all the filters because you just like doing that stuff. You seem spry. You'd be into that, right? Yes. Well, maybe that's enough that it's valued enough that you don't have to put in extra to cover the extra costs of the community. That's pretty cool. Now, some people are like, no, I don't want to do that. Okay, then you just pay. That's fine. This is a really kind of interesting way of looking at things. What about social sustainability? Well, if you want to really have a cohesive community, you need soft skills. You need to be able to listen. You need to be able to express your needs. You need to be able to manage conflict. Those skills are also extremely valuable in the workplace. In fact, I was recently speaking with the president of Camosun College, and she's very interested in working with us on a project to credentialize those soft skills in a way that could be used on the job force or in a community. Social skills will be critical if you want to be in a sustainable community. You cannot, in my opinion, be a functional part of a sustainable community without them. So everyone who joins one of my concept communities needs to have a certain level of social skills or commit to developing those skills before you can live there. If you get in a fight with your neighbor, you want to know that the other neighbors will help you sort it out so you get along again, because no one wants to live in a community where you hate your neighbor. That's not healthy. It's toxic. Oh my God, look what they chucked over the fence. Just anger eats you up. The actual buildings can be designed so that entrances face each other. You go out your front door and you say, "Hi, neighbor," rather than going in your garage, getting in your car, and driving off, and maybe waving. In fact, in the communities we're designing, one of the first pieces of advice we got was keep the cars out. So all the cars will be parked at a parkade at the entrance to the community. That's pretty cool. Then you walk to your pocket neighborhood where all the houses, all the suites have common courtyards. Now, you still have your private space, because we all like our private space. But then you have community hall, where there's opportunities to do activities, a community kitchen, arts and crafts. She ran off to do something creative. Perfect. Pottery wheels, woodworking shop. There was one gal at one of our meetings, she kept saying, "Welding shop." Now the guys were like, yeah, whatever. She was dead set on having a welding studio. I'm like, awesome. If you have those sorts of community amenities, you can also create community art. You can also maintain your facilities better. You cut down a tree because it's no longer viable, you take it into the woodworking shop, and boom, out comes a totem pole, a bench, I don't know. The community would have the ability to decide that and build it on their own. That's kind of special. It gives you an ownership over that property. And if you have some input on the design, like I want my door to be red, I'm going to put a First Nations carving over my door. It's a very different living experience. It goes beyond that small town feel that many of us strive for or hear about, or I'm so nostalgic for what it was like in the good old days. They weren't that good. They just weren't. We like to think they were, but they weren't. It can be done better. We know more now. Environmental sustainability, you've heard of rainwater harvesting, yes? Imagine all the water that hits your roof goes into a cistern, gets filtered and processed and made into drinking water, cooking water, bathing water. We've done research to know that in this part of the planet, 600 square feet of roof is enough to capture all the rainwater you need to live on. If we just capture all the rainwater from November, that's enough for the entire year. You just need a really big tank or cistern to catch it all. Wow. Okay, maybe we'll spread out our collection over, the year, but that's pretty interesting. We all know about solar panels that create power. What about solar panels that create water? Huh? There's an invention called a zero mass water panel that condenses water out of the air 20,000 times. Now, are we going to use those? Probably not, but it's really nice to know the options there. Environmental sustainability. You're in the middle of the desert. Throw up a zero mass water panel, get 30 liters of water on a regular basis for drinking. Wow. Now we start realizing that these communities could be dropped all over the planet if designed correctly. The science and the ability is there. What about all those great toxic materials we use in our houses? There are lists that have been created of red listed materials, and every building on the planet can easily be built without any of those. Some of the most simple materials are still the most effective. Who's heard of the pyramids? They're still around, right? Some of the materials used in those can be used today. Who's heard of the Great Wall of China? Yeah, they're still around too. In fact, some of the worst built sections of the Great Wall of China are still standing because they incorporated sticky rice. Really? You're kidding me, right? No, I'm not kidding you. Well-built sections have fallen down. They used the wrong mortar. Sticky rice sections, still there, poorly built, sticky rice. The buildings we're looking to put together use hemp, industrial hemp, and lime. It's like ancient. It's in the pyramids and the Great Wall of China. And they make these Lego blocks out of it. Totally sustainable. Over 100 years, they absorb, for an average size house, will absorb roughly 20,000 tons of carbon dioxide. What? And the walls get harder as they do that because they're collecting carbon. That's pretty cool. This is environmental sustainability done in a way that's incorporated into housing. These Lego blocks, I saw a guy who's holding a piece that's about this thick, took a torch to it and just held it there. This side's red hot. And he's holding the thing. They took a torch and heat blasted one at 800 degrees centigrade, I believe, for 2 hours, and then took a fire hose to it. And you know what happened? They blasted off about an inch, which it probably would have done if they just used the fire hose before burning it anyways. That's crazy. We're talking about going into a stage where we're worried about forest fires ripping through our communities. I think the other thing too is it's all about respecting and enhancing the cycles of nature. So if you look at a beautiful property and you're like, well, let's tear down all the trees. What if you could make those little pocket neighborhoods and leave 80% of the land as trees, particularly those gorgeous, big, huge ones that have been there forever? We benefit way more from big trees. So strategically pursue living fully, respect the natural cycles, flip the switch on the darkness, for crying out loud. And if you can't create your own sustainable community, join one. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.